want to talk to you about a book that I read yesterday while I was at the beach. Now, I'd read this book many years ago, but trying to pick it up and reading it at the house, it wasn't catching my attention, so I thought, I'll go down to the beach. If I feel like reading, I'll read it. If there's anything to this book, it'll get my attention. That's what I did, and I thought enough to actually put a highlighter, because I did preface, and although I didn't read all the prologue, I did kind of glance at it, and it said to get the most out of this book, we suggest that you read through a chapter and then highlight the points that you think were important. So that's what I did. It's a book you've probably heard of by Dale Carnegie. When I took his course many years ago, it's How to Win Friends and Influence People. So 3 principles that were covered in the first 3 chapters, and that's as far as I've gotten so far. First is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Second is give honest and sincere appreciation. The third is arouse in the person an eager want. Now, when we're talking about that very first principle about not criticizing, not criticizing, condemning, or complaining, it goes and it mentions a number of bad guys back from like the 30s, in the days of the big old mobsters and, your Al Capones and folks like that. In fact, he mentions Al Capone, and the point is, we ourselves, will try to justify our actions and see ourselves in the best light, at least as far as when we're talking to somebody else. For instance, if you talk to Al Capone, he didn't think he was a bad dude. He thought he was a public benefactor that people just misunderstood. Says in here that 90 times out of 100, people don't criticize themselves for anything, no matter how wrong it may be. And therefore, criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. It is also dangerous because it wounds their pride, it hurts their sense of importance, and can arouse resentment. So it is much better to not criticize them, because it's not going to serve any particular purpose. Now, this is just, I think, the best, thing about how to tell somebody they're an idiot without saying it that I've ever read. So I'm going to read it to you. John Wanamaker. It's on page 33 of my book. So it says, I have enough trouble overcoming my own limitations without fretting over the fact that God has not seen fit to distribute evenly the gift of intelligence. If you think about that, he's telling you you're a dummy, but he does it so nicely you don't even catch it until you really think about it. It says, as much as we thirst for approval, we also hate condemnation. And as I mentioned, bad guys, wrongdoers, they're going to blame everybody but themselves. And so if you try to correct them, condemn them, any of that, all that's going to happen is they're just going to justify themselves, and so it's not going to have its desired effect. Lincoln, he mentions, got in the habit of not criticizing folks because he found that was really counterproductive, and so throughout his life, as much as people irritated him, if he did feel compelled to write a letter, he would write it and then just not send it. And that way, the other person did know his thoughts and he thought great of them. Says, It says, do you know someone that you would like to change and regulate and improve? Good. That's fine. I'm in favor of it. But why not begin on yourself? From a purely selfish standpoint, that's a lot more profitable than trying to improve others. And it's a lot less dangerous. You know, what is that old, thing, don't worry your friend about the thing in his eye because you got a stick in yours or whatever. One of my convoluted parables, I'm sure. I just gave you. Anyhow, says, we need to keep in mind that folks are humans, and as humans we have frailties, and so we, doing any of those things, criticizing, complaining, or whatever, is just not gonna, get the response that we want. If we go on to the next chapter, says the only way we can get anybody to do anything is that if they want to do it. It says, everybody likes a compliment, and that's certainly true. Goes on to say that do not be mistaken and think that flattery is a compliment. Flattery is insincere. What it's talking about is the kind of compliment that you actually mean. And the person will usually see through you, so they're going to know. They may thank you for it, but they're going to know you didn't really mean it. And here is some words of wisdom from Charles Schwab. This is the Charles Schwab, the top guy. This is back in the days of the 30s when you had your Rockefellers, your Carnegie anyway, all those people that built everything. So Charles Schwab says, I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people the greatest asset I possess. And the way to develop that, the best that is in a person, is by appreciation and encouragement. There is nothing else that so kills the ambitions of a person as criticisms from superiors. I never criticize anyone. I believe in giving a person incentive to work, so I am anxious to praise but loath to find fault. If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise. Goes on to say, Mr. Schwab says, I have yet to find the person, however great or exalted his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of approval than he would ever do under a spirit of criticism. Something that most managers I've dealt with and had seem to get confused. They seem to think that the only thing you're supposed to do is find fault with people and systems and complain and criticize and all the things that he said not to do. It, kind of discusses the difference between appreciation and flattery, the fact that one's sincere and one is not. It also mentions that hurting people will not only not change them, it is never called for. It's just not going to do any good. Let me give you this nugget. We're quickly going to go over the last chapter I went over, and then we're done. Hope you've gotten a few nuggets out of what I've shared with you tonight. This one is important, so I wanted to stop for just a minute and read it to you. It says, I shall pass this way but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer it nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. And I just think that is an awesome thing to consider. I'd really like to end on that note, but since I promised to go over chapter 3, I will do so. And in a nutshell, it says that if you are going out fishing, the main thing you need to keep in mind, you need to bait that hook to suit the fish. In other words, if you like chocolate, are you going to put chocolate on the end of your line to attract fish? Of course not. You're going to put whatever bait you're using or whatever lure you're using so that it'll actually draw fish. It says just to keep that in mind. And also to keep in mind that, you know, that as a person needs to want to do something, there are ways that you can make that individual more prone to want to do what you want to do. And part of that is considering their side of things and where they're coming from. Henry Ford says, if there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. And it goes through several mentions of you know, just how to do that and how various businesses have at times failed in doing that. Says one of the things that, get back to management, and this is kind of the last thought that I'm going to offer you. It says, you know, why can't, if we have a brilliant idea, rather than just kind of putting it out there, why don't we let other people come to that same conclusion and think of it themselves? They're going to like it a lot better that way. They'll utilize a lot better, a lot more of that, and that's usually what you want to happen anyway. So in a nutshell, I hope you got a little bit out of what I've shared with you. Have a nice night.